Welcome, y'all. I'm going to sound a little bit nuts. Um,
Everybody, listen to me, Hatcher. You gotta tell them Silent Green is people.
uh, except my crazy statement is going to be that democracy is people. Um, and that's something important to keep in mind if you're serving it to people. Who am I? My name is Seth Frey. I've been serving democracy, daily tuning, and the cognitive science of collective intelligence for 20 years, all the way back to my first introduction to my science hero, Eleanor Ostrom. Um, and so there's a big conversation right now about the role of AI in democracy. AI is on fire right now. Democracy is also on fire, and so maybe they have something in common. Maybe there's a synergy there. Uh, a lot of conception of the role of you, AI or technology, in democracy is sort of this idea that governance is this box. You put people in it. You give it neat little doodads, a bunch of levers and pulleys and machinery and UI. Um, and while you're at it, why have people at all? Maybe just maybe replace the people with agents and have people on the outside, looking in, see what happens, being delegating to, being represented, paying the bill, I assume. So this is a lot of the vision being offered to you, for your place in democracy. Um, but there's a question about when to replace people. I'm going to introduce this distinction between summative and formative, and what we'll call a collective work. So work has three effects. There's its outcome, there's how it changes us, and then there is the effect of something when everyone does it, the sort of synergies you get when you make it from individual to collective. So there's vaccinating to not get sick, and then there's herd immunity to protect the vulnerable. Vaccinating to not get sick is sort of summative, formative. There's note taking to have notes, then there's note taking to help you think. And the third is Wikipedia is note taking, where it's a type of note taking that if you follow the standard, you'll benefit from other people's notes. So there's a sort of collective level benefit. And note taking to have notes, you should automate that. Note taking as thinking, you shouldn't automate that. Uh, uh, People need to take their own notes sometimes to help remember stuff, to help brainstorm. So the role of AI should be different depending on the use you're putting that work to. You can have make art to have art. That's the output. That's the summative effect, and that's a great role for AI. But if you're making art to sort of process your own thoughts about your place in the world, which is an artist's experience of art, um, uh, that's not something to replace people on. And making art to win at Pictionary, again, this is a common language, and you wouldn't really want to replace that type of making art because it's just not the point. The point of that art is not the output. The point of that art is bringing people together, accomplishing something with other people. And so, same with governance. There's governance for decisions, but there's governance as a human development exercise, and there's governance as a lingua franca for how to live together and organize our lives together. And only the first of those is appropriate for properly replacing people. So we're going to be building up to, well, what is the role of artificial intelligence for formative and collective uses? And we'll get to that. That's a lot of the point of this course. So, for the first, the point is to make people obsolete. But for the other two, the point of AI is really, you could say, to make itself obsolete, to develop people so they don't need it anymore. To teach a person to be a great note taker. Um, uh, to the point that they don't need AI assistance for the type of note taking that helps you know what you think. So building off of this metaphor, governance is as a box for putting people in. What if what if the main thing to improve, the main application technology for these formative and collective uses is to improve the people? What if democracy is not an aggregation procedure, summative conception, but the social capacity for self-governance, a formative and collective conception? Then the thing you're improving, the thing you're doing engineering on is different. And that's hard because humans are a lot harder to do engineering on. They're a harder engineering challenge. And so it takes much more advanced technology to intervene on that part of the box effectively and efficiently. So let's lean into this idea that democracy, what it is a social literacy, a social capacity for self-governance. This goes from Ella Baker, the idea that strong people don't need strong leaders, all the way to Aristotle. A principle in democracy, principle of liberty, is for all to be ruled and for all to be ruled and to rule. Uh, and everyone in between. You can find examples of this sentiment, this formative conception of democracy, in every philosopher of democracy. And philosophers never agree about anything. So it's really notable that we have so much consensus on this subject. Um, uh, really embracing this developmental conception really requires unasking the procedural conception. You just have to face up. Voting is neither necessary nor sufficient for democracy, for governance. Self-governance is really most broadly conceived as a leadership skill set. Voting is just one part of it. There's bonding, arguing, partying, mapping, recruiting, all the daily parts of bringing people together around something meaningful. It's a much larger skill set than we think. At the same time, it's a skill set that is common to a lot of the things that people train up for, whether that's building a business or running a social enterprise or doing peer coaching. The Venn overlap uh, of those skills is developmental leadership and is most of the core of what we're going to conceive as the fundamental democratic training, the fundamental civic training, which is a leadership training. As I showed you with the philosophers, I'm not the only one to say it. And you can actually look all over to find compilations of this sort of lists of skills. So the Internet Development Goals are a taxonomy that is essentially a behavioral standard for this kind of lateral leadership, leadership with others. The competences for democratic culture are a behavioral standard released by Europe, an actual kind of teachable rubric based conception of what every citizen needs to know to be an EU citizen, a citizen of that democracy. We have the core competencies in civic engagement, which were a collection by the Center for Engaged Democracy of reviews of the academic literature, of national reports, and of academic programs, uh, breaking breaking democratic skills up into knowledge, skills, practice, and what they call inclinations. And you have the same breakdown actually in Army leadership. The Army's formal definition of leadership, also a behavioral standard, has a be, do, know breakdown. So it's interesting, these very different behavioral standards all have the same picture of that uh, leadership's a type of person, and that civic capacities, the capacities to engage meaningfully in an organization, means developing a type of person and the same type of person. They pretty much all line up with this be, do, know conception. The last commenting standard is a project I'm working on now to bring all of these together. If we're talking about democracy and governance as a literacy, let's look at a familiar one. Sorry, I'm gonna move. Reading is literacy of our society. It takes 5 years to teach someone to do it. I taught that person how to do it. Not everyone's born to be a reader. Not everyone's going to be a great writer. But that's not the point. We don't really use someone's inherent potential as a reason for whether or not to try to teach it to them. Anyone who learns it can do it anywhere, and that's really important and valuable. Another fact about reading is you can only spread literacy, quote, the hard way. We teach it to everyone, and that's a really inefficient thing to do. Per birth year cohort, it's 4 billion hours to teach everyone to read. Um, you could argue that people who can't read are 1,000 hours more free as humans than people who can, because the 1,000 hours it takes to read were they got to do anything with. But we've decided as a society that that's not really the case. We've decided as a society that it's better than just a few people being literate, less abusable, which is a political commitment, and more things can be read, which is more of a social commitment. Reading's really badly designed. I taught this sentence, the tough coughs as he plows the dough, coined by Dr. Seuss. And it's not the tough cuffs as he plucks the duff. It's not the two coos as he plues the dew. Um, that's a horrible sentence. And you have to learn some horrible rules, but you don't think about it. When you first saw this sentence, you didn't really think twice about what was funny about it. Reading's badly designed, but that's simply not the point. We don't choose to learn it because it's well designed. We don't refuse to learn it because it's badly designed. We just learn it. It's hard. It's not hard to do. It's just hard to learn to do. And if everyone learns to do it, no one thinks about it, and everyone benefits a lot from the fact that everyone knows how to do it. More reading facts. Uh, the point of teaching everyone to read isn't more books. It's more people who could write a book. And we have this idea that raising society's ceiling means raising its floor with with this kind of emergent benefit. Finally, universal literacy is taken for granted. It feels easy to do because you've internalized the rules deeply. It's hard to comprehend a world on the other side of this literacy. Though it is worth asking, would you be as good at uh, reading prompts? And would your users be as good at prompting you if they were illiterate? Really the only voices openly criticizing reading are grandiose extremists, whether that's Curtis Yarvin or this David Fogarty on Twitter. um Non-readers can still use the technologies of reading productively, just not to their full potential. They can't get as much out of a book as someone who can read can get. And really, once everyone knows it, it's a really good system, individually for storing and retrieving, socially for connecting with others. So, having done all that, now let's just go through democracy. It's a literacy too, not a set of the mechanisms. It's a project of human leadership development. So let's go through. Self-governance is a literacy of our society. It takes 5 years to teach someone to do it. Not everyone's born to do it. Not everyone will be a great leader, but we don't use that as a reason not to teach it to anyone. Anyone who learns how to do it can bring people together anywhere out of anything. You can only spread illiteracy and democracy the hard way. We teach everyone, if we teach everyone, it's very time inefficient. And you can argue that people who can't lead are 1,000 hours more free because they didn't have to spend that time. But we've decided as a society, American society, that's better than just a few people having the power to lead. It's less abusable, and more centers of power can be created, which is more socially efficient. Now, self-governance is really badly engineered, but that's kind of not the point. A common behavioral standard throughout American history has been parliamentary procedure, personified by Robert's Rules of Order, and they're not very good. They're clunky. They're hard to memorize. They're a little hierarchical, but the design's not the point. We never chose to learn it because it's well designed, and we never really refused to learn it because it was badly designed. We just learned it because it was a common language for governance, and ultimately, it's not hard to do. It's just hard to learn to do. Um, we've also got emergent benefits when everyone can read. So the point isn't making more decisions; it's more people who can do self-organization. Um, this universal literacy is really taken for granted. If it feels easy, it's because you've internalized the rules deeply. These are a pocket edition of parliamentary procedure from the 40s, I found. And it can be really hard to comprehend the world on the other side of this literacy. It's hard to imagine a world in which every American is literally literate in leadership. Um, Now, non-readers can still use the technologies of democracy productively, just not to their full potential. We have here the example of Bodie McBoatface, an actual ship of, I think, the Royal Navy that was named in a public poll with this ridiculous name because if you just let anybody participate in voting without training or without a sense of responsibility over their org, you'll get what you get. Now, once everyone knows it, it's a really good system for storing and retrieving, for growing and connecting and deciding. Tocqueville notes that the commotions of municipal discord are unfrequent and the conduct of local business easy because the political education of the people has long been complete. These are his observations about Americans in the 1830s. So, yeah, what if there's no box? What if fixing governance, we can only do it the hard way? What if we can only do it by teaching everyone experientially? This starts to get us into the role of AI. What if the procedures of democracy are inert vestiges of a forgotten time? What if the procedures of democracy mean nothing outside the context of the skilled people who built them? What if those people are extinct because we stopped teaching democracy as a basic literacy? Um, what if we've been building the wrong thing, that democracy is actually people? If we treat democracy as its decision processes, forgetting the people who built those processes for their context, you're just doing cargo cult democracy. You can't reconstruct the process, recite some incantation, and expect the people to appear magically. So this gets to the place of AI and self-governance. It's cultivating better citizens. I call this developmental artificial intelligence. Imagine orchestrating agents to bottle and transmit new experiences between humans, experientially, replicating and scaling formative experiences, um, building a world that's ready for democracy. What if only 5 citizens in the United States are actually qualified to vote for the president of the United States? These being 3 of them. What if everyone was personally qualified to run for president? Would we even need a president? So understanding democracy as a set of human literacies that take 5 years to instill changes how you look at things. But it points to a very skillful population that can then build its own tools and needs very different tools once they're built. The place of AI in this is experiential simulation. Imagine wargaming life lessons, transmitting experiences to others as fables. Onboarding is a simulation of the trauma that made an organization how it is today. Building an org 10 times in simulation before building it once. In this way, reading and self-governance are akin, which raises this question: what if governing is already as easy as writing a letter to a friend? The litmus test for developmental AI in all this is to ask, how hard is AI working to make itself obsolete? For formative and collective efforts, that's the bar. That's the litmus test for the role of AI. With all that, I want to imagine a world that's prepared for democracy because every person has been through the crucible of leadership. Thank you.